So, hello and welcome back to the podcast. And I'm so excited today to be here with Nixon. And he's in Australia and I'm in Mexico, so we have to coordinate this time difference. But yeah, I read some of his writings, on social media and a couple of other podcasts that you did. And I really resonated with a lot of things that you said, not only specifically about ayahuasca, just like in general about like plant medicine and psychedelic healing and psychedelic assisted therapy. And yeah, so I'm just so excited to meet you and to have a little conversation with you, and hopefully that all the people who listen will enjoy the benefits of that. So I always ask people when they come on the podcast that did the medicine come into your life? And I love to hear these stories. Everybody has a
Oh yeah.
story. And what is the biggest kind of thing that you can share with people that, okay, before plant medicine my life was, and after? Normally we
Oh,
have this distinction that what did you take away so far, from this experience?
how long's this podcast? So
Yeah, we have to make maybe several
yeah,
episodes, but let's
I'll
just like
summarize.
scratch the surface today.
Yeah. How did I get it? Well, I always was into mind-altering substances, but I had no context for them. Like, I remember when I was like 8, my brother got caught smoking pot. And I was at home at the time, and there's this big hoo-ha. And I remember thinking at 8 years old, I was like, I'm gonna try that. And I was like, oh, okay. I was just remembering this the other day. And then I was in high school, and people were trying drugs. That's what happens. So I tried LSD, and that was just completely blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, what the hell is this stuff? And then I got really obsessed with acid, and I did way too much, I'd say. and Then I heard about mushrooms, and I was like, oh, I'd like to try something a bit more natural. And I was just like always fascinated by the idea. There's like, oh, you can take these things and you hallucinate. I have to try this. So there was always some part of me that was interested in altered states of consciousness. I think that if I'd grown up in an indigenous tribe, I probably would have been, picked out to do this sort of shamanic training stuff early on. But because there's none of that in this current Western culture, I just ended up in the drug culture and haphazardly trying to experiment with a lot of stuff. And, I think there's a lot of um, latent shamanic people in that sort of drug culture, but they just don't have any context with it. So they end up in sort of addiction and all sorts of trouble. And then I got to but I was always reading a lot of stuff about this stuff. Even in high school, I was fascinated. I'd go down to the library, read all the books. Um, I'd heard about ayahuasca when I was like in university, and I was like, well, I just thought I had to go to the Amazon to try that. So I was like, one day I'll do that. I got around to about 33. At that point, I'd been a comedian for 13 years. That's a whole different story. Nothing was working. I was like a car upside down with its wheels spinning around in the air. And so I managed to locate a facilitator. I think it was just time. It was my time. If I'd had it before, it wasn't my time. So, they say the medicine calls you when you're ready. And so that was my time. I ended up drinking this brew with a fella in Byron Bay, really nice guy, Sandro, and a good facilitator too. And also very nice tasting ayahuasca. He used to be a barista, so I think that helped. And then I had a very powerful experience where I communicated to the guide intelligence, like literally talked to planet Earth. At that point, I'd say I was a cynical, materialist, nihilist, hedonist. I didn't really believe in anything. I was very cynical. Everything was bullshit. And I was just like, wow, that was like something out of Avatar. I have to try this again. So I managed to locate another facilitator. And on my third experience with him, it was like a 2-nighter. I experienced like a exorcism, and I had like a malevolent entity taken out of my stomach, and basically serious like 11 years of depression and a whole bunch of associated coping strategies were just sort of not there anymore over like in the space of 2 days. So I was just like, what the hell is this stuff? And also all of a sudden I realized that spiritual realities were true, and you could, I'd read about all this stuff, but I never actually experienced it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, this shit's real. Okay. And everything changed after that. And then, yeah. And then that sort of set me off on the path of plant medicine.
Wow. So even though you had experiences, many experiences from early on with psychedelics, but not in an intentional ceremonial setting, this
Yeah.
was completely different. Why do
Yeah.
you think that was, that it was such a different experience than, for example, taking a bunch of acid before?
Oh, intention. That's what it was. Like I remember the first ceremony I did, and of course the ceremonial container. Um, I just remember coming out of that going, oh my God, I've been doing this wrong all these years. This is what I was looking for. I was looking for this in all the dance music festival culture. But there you just sort of take some acid and go dancing. And sometimes you get a healing, but it's not very efficient or effective sometimes. And also a lot of the time you're going to run away from your issues in those settings. You're just trying to escape. But that's the difference between medicine, right, and drugs. Drugs are you're escaping. Medicine, you're actually going straight into the reason why you're healing everything you're afraid of. So that's what I realized. Yeah.
Right, right. And yeah, I think that we need some more episodes, to go into the juicy details. But I think that through your journey, right, you have a lot of experience and also with other people. So I would like to focus today on some traps and pitfalls of the psychedelic path, because I think that certainly I was very naive when I started on this path. I didn't understand, as you said, I was born in Hungary, and that was like part of communist Russia at that time. So I had no spirituality. I had no understanding of how to work with these plants, of what kind of processes and spirit. And even like I was a psychologist, I was like,
Okay.
I had Western, like the understanding more on the mental level things. And so so I was certainly very naive, and I think that a lot of people are very naive and uneducated when they kind of start going into this path and exploring it, and also just it's hard to, even when you read about things, but you don't have nothing to compare it to, so you can't even validate the information, right? Of like, yeah, so and that's why I'm so passionate about putting content out there, from people who actually walk that path for a while now, and they have something to share, and hopefully that will make it easier for people. And the other thing is that I think that a lot of people have this unrealistic expectation that these medicines, some magic pill, and is the answer, to everything. So we're
Sometimes they are.
yeah,
Not
definitely.
all the time.
Right. So, the first thing that you mentioned as a can be a trap or a pitfall is the obsession of healing. So, tell me a little bit about what do you mean by that?
Oh, yeah, I guess this is what I found in me actually. It came out of my first Iboga journey I had, and I only was able to write down one note during that whole journey because I was so completely out of it. And all it said was, this obsession with wellness is a sickness. And I just
Mm.
remember thinking that, and I've seen this a lot through the scene, both myself and other people's processes. It becomes like this obsession, and the obsession is coming from a really um, broken place. Well, maybe broken's the wrong word, but it's basically there's for some weird reason in our culture there's a lot of people who don't love themselves. I don't know why this meme is so widespread through our culture. There's various theories about, because we haven't gone through any rites of the passage, there's no initiation, and also there's all these destructive cultural programs operating in this time. But yeah, this belief that people have that they're not enough and they're not worth loving, and that they have to be absolutely perfect and perfectly healed in order to then be worthy of some kind of love, which I don't even know if that idea of that love is even realistic. Um, and so plants, and this is just spread out through the whole wellness scene. You'll see these people They go to all the courses, they do all the online courses, they do, you know, breath work, they do qigong, yoga, everything they can do, and it's this real sort of neurotic driving force, but they never quite actually heal the underlying problem. And if anything, that actually drives them to then aggravate it further by doing another course, and then that's still not enough. And like, oh my God, I'm still not enough. Like I'm not fixed. Like there's this point where you're fixed. There's several points where you're like, okay, I'm definitely better than I was, say, 4 months ago. And okay, yes, I've definitely reached a level. But there's no end point, you know, and you know, it just keeps going. So I don't know, I feel like it's more now it's about the journey, and you know, making sure you don't, because then what happens is that you spend all your time healing and it becomes a very self-obsessed, almost narcissistic pattern. And I think yeah, I think once you get to a certain point of healing, there's a lot that you can actually give back. And you know, it's good to then try and balance it out, because what I've been finding is that when I'm helping people through processes and healing, that's actually ends up healing my crap as well. So it's just trying to find a balance, I guess. Yeah, so that's that in a nutshell.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely, it's all about the balance, but I can very much resonate to, you know, what you're saying in my personal life, and also working with people. And I think, you know, that I really find that Dr. Gabor Mate and his interpretation of addiction being a coping mechanism to trauma, I
Yeah.
feel that's very true. And so that compulsion, that addictive compulsive pattern or energy, I certainly seen it transform in my life, and go into, well, healthier and healthier behavior, but it was the same obsession, you know, about, as you
Yeah,
said,
same
of course
energy.
it's better to be obsessed about yoga than
Yeah.
about heroin, for
I'm,
sure.
I'm, I'm addicted to cacao now, so.
Right, right. But if you look at the energetic level, and if you look at that, you know, I'm still not good enough, and I still have to do more, and you know, be better. Then you are just at the same place mentally, in that same loop than
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were before, and it's good to be aware of that, and also. I think when people start to go within, of course, first it's just like it fills up their entire world, so it's all about them. But as you said, that once you kind of reach a level, then you can continue doing that, but you have more space for other people, and helping others, and that's also part of, you know, our process, and our healing as well.
Yeah. I
So
do think though that there is a time where that actually do have to focus on yourself. So I don't want to say that from,
absolutely,
you know,
yeah,
there is
yeah,
often a period in the beginning where it's like I haven't worked through any of my shit at all my
yeah.
whole life. So you know,
Yeah,
by
yeah.
all means,
Take some
let me
time out
know.
then for
Yeah,
that.
because otherwise, sometimes you see the opposite where people do one circle and they're like, right, I'm going to become a facilitator and I'm going to help people, but they still haven't worked through enough of their
Yeah,
shit. And
we're
I
gonna
definitely
come to that. But actually, that ties into the next one, which is, you know, not necessarily being ready, you know, to do this kind of deep diving and self-discovery and healing on such a deep level. And I certainly resonate with that. Like, I only work with the ayahuasca, and I don't take on people for my program who never had any therapy before, or who don't have a
Okay, yeah,
spiritual practice or something, you know, like I recommend them to start with something just milder and more gentler, and maybe, you know, because, so I definitely feel that it's amazing that there's so many medicines and plants and paths and practices, because everybody can find, but I think that sometimes people can make choices out of the wrong places and say, oh, I want to go to an ayahuasca ceremony because all my friends are going, and not
yeah,
because, you know, I think, you know, I'm ready, you know, for that experience. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. What do you mean by not being fully ready, and how can that end up kind of re-traumatizing a person instead of being a healing experience?
It's complicated because like I don't know if you can ever really be ready for something like that because it's so completely different to regular reality. Um, so yeah, it's and also I've had people where you know I was facilitating groups for about 6 years. I've since stopped. So um, yeah, in the beginning, definitely I was taking, I was a man on a mission. I was like, we need to get this to everyone. We need to change the world. I was a real evangelist. So I was getting it to people who, it definitely wasn't as safe as the more, the sort of probably the retreat spaces that you guys run, especially with the combined where you have a psychologist, you have a doctor, you have everyone, which is, I think, really great. Um, but so some people come in and maybe they weren't ready but I do feel like sometimes they were meant to go through that, because if they hadn't, a lot of people wouldn't want to do the therapy work because everyone's stuck in a quick fix sort of frame of mind in the West. You say, all right, well, why don't you go do 6 months of therapy first and then come back? I doubt that a lot of those people would actually do that because, money, time, people just kind of, but then if you were to give people these medicines, that might actually then cause them to then go work backwards, which is what happened to me. Because I was like, I was just like, oh, I'll just drink medicine and I'll become enlightened. And then, after nearly losing my mind, I realized, oh, actually, I have to work backwards now. It's not, and now I'm realizing I have to do everything. I have to do my qigong practice. I have to do my meditation practice. I have to go do therapy now. So, so it's sort of like, it's very hard, but I do know what you mean by people just experience chasing now, because, I've definitely noticed a change of demographic from when I first started out, where it's just sort of countercultural people and maybe people who had tried everything else and they'd heard about this stuff. So they were really, really wanted it because nothing else had worked for whatever their issue was. And then towards the end, I started noticing, oh, okay, this guy's, oh yeah, I heard about it on a podcast. I just want to see what it's like, which is fine because sometimes those people do encounter really deep healings. But I did see it I could see the fad sort of stuff happening, which meant that because our culture, I'd say, is pretty emotionally immature, a lot of people would then be like, oh yeah, I'll try this ayahuasca thing. I heard some celebrity talk about it. And then it's like, just here's your stuff, and they're like, and so it was really confronting to some people. But I'm in two minds. I don't really have a solid position on it because I do feel that it is good to be safe and to be careful and to be as gentle as possible. And obviously, you don't want to re-traumatize anyone. But then on the other hand, sort of whole world's kind of going to shit, and there's kind of a question of time thing.
What are we waiting for, right? Yeah,
Yes.
I resonate with that. And I think the ayahuasca is especially like that. And I totally hear what you're saying because, from a spiritual perspective, for me, I think I trust the medicine. And if somebody was called to the medicine
Yeah.
and they seek it out and they make effort to go there, and, that means something. My comment was more about that I have a very specific problem or program, and I can say to people that I don't think this is the best for you, what I can offer, and maybe somebody else can support you, better in that or something like that. But I do believe, and also I think this can go so deep to this conversation, that what is healing, what is a healing experience, like I have some pretty crazy stories about that I witnessed and went through.
Sure.
So
But I mean, I totally do understand there are some people that I met where I was just like, no, this does not seem right. This person definitely getting strong intuitive feeling that this would break them, especially because some of these people, at least in the beginning, everyone had tried something like, oh, I tried weed or I tried acid, and you're getting people who some people haven't even drunk alcohol before, well, most have, but all of a sudden you get people who have absolutely no experience with any altered state. So yeah, for sure. I mean, it is starting to hit the mainstream. So I think that's where you're sort of, where the programs are useful because it gives people skills for navigation and integration for stuff that would be completely not relatable to their everyday life previous to this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other side of this coin is, as you also mentioned in your article, is when somebody, keeps just drinking a lot of medicine. And I call this like ceremony hopping, and people are just going from, and when they start to come off the ayahuasca high, they are like, I need another ceremony
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
And they do not really do a lot of integration and other additional healing work and like basically everything that they need to address their own issues. This can go into like the spiritual ego and spiritual bypassing oftentimes, I've seen people really blinded, really
Oh
believing,
yeah, yeah.
that they are,
They think they know.
transcended, certain things. And especially I think with the ayahuasca, I know a good amount of people who do drink a lot of medicine and host or facilitate circles and stuff, and they are very, very ungrounded. I almost feel like they are not even in this world fully and completely. So I resonate with that it can be, I feel that, as we said earlier, it's all about balance and be
Yeah,
open up, but also be here and be grounded. And people can get uprooted and just kind of float float away.
yeah.
What
I
do you think
mean,
about that?
oh well, yeah. That was me for about a year and a half. So, and I keep meeting versions of myself of where I used to be, and they're like really triggering to me. So I have to like be like, okay, okay, that was me. But I guess yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, I was reading about how some of the shamans in Peru, like who've grown up with the medicine, they're able to run 5 ceremonies a week, drinking full cups, like 50 weeks a year, which is incredible. I'm like, oh my god! But they've done 12 years of practice. They've done all the dietas, but then I think then what happens is that everyone here is just like everyone's being called, and I think that's fine. That's kind of it's a numbers game, but also the way I see it is like our culture's not used to any of this work. So this is a new phase of reintroducing this medicine back into our culture. And so people just assume, oh, I can just drink this all the time, and this will be the quick fix. And the thing is, you don't realize that it's happening incrementally. Like I didn't realize that I'd lost my mind for about a year and a half until I did a boga, ironically, and it just sort of made me just face everything that I hadn't seen because I'd been drinking so much medicine. And I think that's a real danger where you just because you're altered all the time, your actual way of measuring your general ground state has shifted. So you're continually shifting further and further away of whatever normal reality is. And also, if you're running ceremonies, I mean, I don't know, I could run maybe one every 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 3, 4 weeks was my comfortable thing. But I'm hearing that some people, they're running every week or every 2 weeks. They haven't had much training. So, and then on top of that, you're surrounding by people who, by and large, are having positive experiences. So, everyone's telling you how great you are, and you're drinking medicine at the same time. So everyone's, people get really lost. So there's just deeper levels of bypassing. And a big trap that I fell into was like, I drunk a certain amount of medicine and I just thought, all right, I've dealt with all my stuff. I've seen my shadow. And what I didn't realize was that there's actually the shadow keeps going. The more you move up, the more shadow comes out. But I just was like, no, I've dealt with all that. I'm perfectly enlightened now. And then when the Iboga showed me like all this other shadow I hadn't seen, I was like, oh my God, I had a total mental breakdown. And I just stopped everything for about 10 months because I was like, actually, I need a break. I need to just, and I really like being in my body now. It's really nice. Everyone's always talking about the ascension, but I really think it's about coming back down to the earth right now because I don't know. I've just
So resonate with that, and I really recommend to everybody to have some kind of movement practice like yoga or qigong or tai chi or something that supports me so much, and I observed that a lot of people obviously who are called to these powerful medicines, they are also carry deep trauma that they want to heal. And when you have trauma, you're already out of the body to a certain extent. So healing is is that kind of anchoring and embodiment and feeling safe in the body,
Yeah.
and I feel that sometimes that element doesn't happen, and certain movement practices can really help people in their healing process to come back and to ground and
Yeah.
anchor into the body and into the earth, which is part of the healing, while you can still keep connected and open upwards, of course.
Yeah. Well, I think the more grounded you are, the further up you can go. But
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people mistake healing for just feeling good all the time, and that's just not it's not realistic.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
and I
sustainable.
think I loved, what you said about experience chasers, breakthrough addicts, and catharsis junkies. I loved all of your, little metaphors and stuff, and I think this is probably one of the main messages, that healing is not an event; it's a process,
Yeah,
and it's
it's a
not
long process.
glamorous, and oftentimes even the ceremony is not glamorous, but
No, no.
definitely the healing, and it takes a lot of voluntary effort and dedication. And I always say to people, it's like weeding a garden, and you just like
Yeah,
keep at it, and it's like becoming your lifestyle as well, and it's a gradual process, and it's a never-ending journey. So again, that expectation that we have, I think, in the West, of the quick fix, it's
yeah,
very
yeah,
strongly present in this space.
yeah. I think you can make quite a lot of ground early on because it's quite surface level stuff which gets
Yeah.
healed. But then, I feel like after the first, after a while, then it's like, oh, I have to put in some work now. Otherwise, it's just not gonna, you're not gonna get, yeah. And like you said, it's just a long process and you have to change a lot. You'll probably have to change whole friend groups. You have to switch all the anchors which are tying your previous self to the way it is. And so, it's just a can of worms.
Yes, totally. And it can become like a crutch or even an addiction, as we said, because a lot of people say, oh, you can't get hooked up onto ayahuasca because it's not such a nice experience. But I definitely seen people addicted to that high, that peak experience, so to
Yeah,
say, and even in the physical purging and stuff. Like I've seen
yeah,
people
yeah,
loving that part, and feeling that, okay, I have to go to that level to feel that something is happening. And my experience on my healing path was the opposite, that it become more gentle and more subtle,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I definitely that. Yeah, that definitely. Yeah, when people say, "Oh, it's not addictive," addictive is a difficult word. I'd say dependent.
right,
Um, I totally can totally be emotionally dependent.
right.
I think because people just don't feel much these days, right? It's a very unfeeling culture. So, you just go to an ayahuasca ceremony and you'll go through a whole gamut of intense emotions. They might not even be attached to anything, but just the fact that you felt something will just remind you that you're alive and that you're a human, and people get attached to that. And also they're in a community space
The
where obviously there's
community
people,
aspect.
and you don't have to mask around people, and that's very, I wouldn't say addictive, but that's just a basic need that a lot of people don't have satisfied in their everyday lives. So
Absolutely. It's from this perspective, is more like church-like or cult-like
yeah,
aspect,
yeah,
that draws in a lot of people. And I definitely feel that, that is also just the lack of, we lost, our communities and our rituals and stuff. So of course people are craving that, and needing that. So when we talk about, the healing process and where you are in it, and it's a never-ending process, what is your, like I always say to people that, if you want to know how well you are doing, then just look at how much your life changed, how much your relationships changed, how much your lifestyle changed, how much your values, ethics, behavior changed in a positive way. And if you doing something, whatever practices, plant medicine or meditation, and your life is still the same as it was when you started,
yeah, yeah,
years ago, then maybe you're not doing it in the right way, or it's not the right fit for you or something. And I think that that it's a good way to measure that actually how did this make my life better or not, or I'm just loving the experience and the connection and the people there, but I go back and my life is pretty much the same. So how do you how do you gauge, you know, where you are or where people are, and how can they have some clues, you know, on that?
Oh, geez, that's complicated because you can never really fully speak of someone's experience. And when I was running groups, I actually did. I would pull some people aside, who I feel were just sort of coming, not for any, you know, proper reason anymore, and that could be quite confronting. And I was like, well, who the fuck am I to really judge? But I didn't also want to enable the process of dependency. So I felt like I had to say something. And then if they wanted to keep drinking, then that was up to them, but I said it. So for me, it was like, yeah, if you can you can kind of tell if someone's level hasn't really shifted after, you know, or if like you said, their regular lifestyle hasn't really changed that much, which is another thing which happens. People drink medicine, they get like instant enlightenment for about 8 hours, maybe a grace period for a month. But then they don't change any of their anchors in their regular life, and so they slide back. And so I guess it was more of an intuitive thing for me, and also just seeing where the discrepancy between their talk and how they walk, I guess it was a big tip for me, and also for myself. I'm definitely could see it in people because I'd done the same stuff myself. So. So yeah, I guess it was more of an intuitive thing to see if people were still in the same place they were. But and also you just see their patterns. If they're coming every 1 or 2 months or every week, there's a good chance. But I mean, in general, I was finding people would come maybe anywhere between two to 10 times, depending on their level of trauma or whatever stuff they wanted to fix. And then after that, most people would just come back. They wouldn't come back at all, or they'd come back, once every year, twice a year for a tune-up, and I think that's totally fine. Yeah. So that was a general pattern that I would measure other people against, and then if there were people who were coming every month for like a year or 2 years, and I didn't notice much change, then I'd be like, okay, I think there's some stuff going on here. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely say that that can be a big sign of, change in your behavior and how durable that change is.
Yeah.
If it's just a grace period or this is something long lasting, and for that we say at least, a year, you had that, at least, not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm sober 2 weeks, I'm okay now,
Yeah.
or something like that. But how durable is the change? And that was, because I don't serve the medicine. I'm a therapist. I have people in there prep and yeah, in the
Avoiding a
integration.
lot of chaos.
So, but I really noticed that that's why I created this program, because I follow up with my clients back to like 5-6 years when I started this program. I keep in touch with them, and it is very durable, the change. They did obviously the whole, they did like therapy, like for a year in conjunction with the medicine. But even though they had extremely stressful situations occurring in their life, afterwards, that they managed to keep themselves anchored and positively respond and not backslide or fall back into old patterns. And that for me shows that, okay, this is more durable and lasting, this effect, and not something that is temporary. So we can reflect on that, and everybody can reflect on that. That is like how lasting the changes are.
And that is with a supportive therapy program in
Right.
conjunction with. Yeah. I can see how that would work. I think that's where it's going, to be honest. Like, I'm seeing more retreats, hearing about more retreat spaces here where you're doing, a week's worth of personal work, and then you do the medicine, and
Right.
then the results seem to be deeper. So, yeah, I think there'll always be a range of programs afoot. But yeah.
Yeah, I believe, that for me, this particular medicine is such a deep, like a powerful tool that um, I think, that without any kind of support and guidance is very um, intense, the experience. And I didn't really had guidance. That's how I ended up creating this program. It's probably, another podcast we will discuss our personal stories. But yeah, it's just like, all in all, after like more than 10 years that I have a relationship with this medicine, I would say, that the main teaching that I took away was that you are the healer and love is the medicine, and everything
Yeah.
else is just helping you to remember that and
Yeah.
to recognize that, in yourself in some way, just as the medicine or the yoga or the qigong or your friend, like
Yeah. Yeah.
people. And it really, I think for me, until I found the medicine, I kept looking for tools, the perfect tool as a therapist, as a healer. And I was trained, in like a zillion type of, and I just needed, and I was like, which is the tool, the perfect tool, the perfect methodology that will, and then with the medicine, he was like, you are the tool, you are the, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, that's cool, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the
so
medicine just fast tracks stuff. So
absolutely,
it
like
gets to similar
magnifies and
states.
amplifies. Yeah. What is your takeaway with your journey, with specifically from the ayahuasca? Can you summarize it in some
Oh,
way?
geez. It made me realize that I have emotions. As a man in this culture is problematic at best, and that it was showing me like that I have this reflex where I think I'm going to be attacked whenever I'm expressing feelings that I was able to disable. Like I said before, it showed me the existence of spiritual realities. It made me realize I used to have this paralyzing fear of death before I started drinking the medicine, and it really. I mean, I'm still. I wouldn't say I'm afraid of. Obviously, I'm going to be anxious when it happens, but I'm not as afraid as I was before, which was like a crippling sort of fear, because it showed me, the illusion of death and the, um, you know, whatever you want to call it, transmigration, soul sort of stuff. Um, I don't know. It's just done so much for me. It's just, I guess it's just made me realize that, we're all connected. It's corny. It's basically all the hippie cliches are true. That we're all connected, and we are going through some incredibly transitional, crazy times. I was basically shown this download, which was a combination of the Matrix and the Star Wars. And
Wow.
I'm still processing that to this day. I'm like, okay, all right, there's some pretty weird shit in there. Um, but and yeah, it was kept on telling me, oh yeah, things are going to start really amping up, and it's going to get crazy, and everyone starts needs to grow up and stuff. And then last 2 years started hitting, and I was like, oh my god, all that stuff that I saw like 5 years ago is actually happening now. I just figured I'd have like 10 years to prepare. So yeah, and I guess it just showed me, the the ultimate divinity of our true cosmic selves, um, and the unity and the oneness, all that sort of stuff that the hippies were talking about. All the stuff that I read
Definitely.
in the books was
Yeah,
all
it was an experience. Yeah, definitely. I think that's why it's such a deep experience, because like you can read a book about Buddhism and connectedness, and we are all one and all that, and you can understand it intellectually. You can believe in it. Like there's
yeah,
like all layers, but to experience that on a deeper level,
yeah,
that I think that creates a very powerful anchor experience where
yeah,
people can kind of go back to.
yeah. And when you're actually talking to a spirit and you're like, oh, okay, this is weird, and it's telling you information that you couldn't have known any other way, or talking to your, in my case, I talked to my dead grandfather, which was pretty weird, or connected with him. um I don't know. As much as we said, hey, you got to do all this work. I think the first few experiences, you can't unsee that stuff. So that really does fundamentally change a lot of people, and you can't forget that stuff. So definitely the first couple of times, I think a lot of people in my opinion, I think pretty much anyone who doesn't have schizophrenia or has any sort of latent issues should do it at least once, just to have that reference point. Because I think that's why people are able to deal with stuff, because they get given the long shot, the bird's eye view of everything. And so, sure, they might crash their car or the bus might come late, but all of a sudden they're like, hey, you know what? It doesn't really fucking matter because, I'm just a small speck on this earth. It's really not that bad. It's just it's a petty, mundane earth thing. So I think that's why a lot of people get benefits from this medicine, because it just gives them perspective. And as a culture, we're just so focused on the close-up myopic details of everything. We forget to step back and realize that there's a really huge picture that we're just a tiny speck in.
Very true. So what would you say to people who are just now thinking about, going down that path, and they are in that place of total naivete and enthusiasm?
Oh, geez. I reckon just put a prayer out, pray that you have good karma and you'll attract the right person in. Oh man, I would say don't do too much research, because I get sometimes people will do too much research and they'll have these ideas about what the experience is going to be like, and it'll actually block the experience from happening. Or they'll be having this completely different experience and they're so focused on this other experience that it's happening, they're not even consciously aware that it'll happen until like a week later, like, oh my God, I had this dreamlike experience. I remembered everything that happened, but I wasn't even there. So I would warn against researching too much. It's really up to the person. I mean, if you really want to get the most out of the medicine, and you're sort of the sort of person who'd study a lot, I reckon then for sure do some therapy. I'm doing some IFS therapy at the moment, internal family systems, and that's been really amazing at sort of helping me decipher and interpret people's experiences, including my own. Some kind of somatic experiencing, sort of body work, sort of embodiment stuff. I mean, yeah, meditation if you want. I mean, it's up to you how much time and how much you want to prepare for this. But some people, like myself, we wouldn't have done that. So I think if you really want it, just send out a prayer and she'll come for you. And then there's probably a whole nother podcast on how to discern which facilitators for you. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Actually, we have already 2 episodes out there, the dark side of plant medicine and the abuse of power, but that's always, something that we can add to. And of course, it's not only specific to this area, but that's like present everywhere. So good to be aware. Yeah, I think, that one of the problem that I can see coming from the West, going into the shamanic cultures, and then learning to see from their perspective, then I recognize that we were trying to understand something from a limited perspective, that we have no experience. So it's very difficult, to describe it. There is no point to relate to. There is no history. There is no experience. There is no heritage. It's very alien, so to say, for most people. And I think that a lot of people like us, we are also here to kind of bridge that gap and help people, because it's a very different world, and to reconcile with that, especially if you are then returning to your previous little bubble, that's gonna be like a clash of the worlds experience. For most people have that experience.
And that's why some of the healings don't stay sometimes, because they go back to their old world where people treat them like they were beforehand. and I think a lot of the issues which are coming right now is just basically we're reintroducing an indigenous way of seeing the world and being into a colonized space where it's just there's this huge disconnect. And so, like you said, I mean, that's one of the main messages that I got told in my first ayahuasca experience. She told me, "You're a bridge," and there's a lot of messages about mending the bridges and rebuilding the bridges. And I see myself and you and everyone who's doing the medicine right now sort of in the first wave of trying to link these disconnected worlds back together again, as to the best of our abilities. And also, these medicines were from the Amazon, so our culture is not even in any way linked to the Amazon, you know. So there's going to be a big transfer of trying to globalize this stuff because, you know, these people who were using it traditionally, you know, everyone in the village would have been using it. You'd go on a journey or a healing experience and you could talk to your auntie and then she'd be like, oh yeah, that I had something similar happen to me. So you weren't, you know, it wasn't integration was within the community.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, and yes. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience. I hope that we will have a next time, you know, when we can connect and talk about other stuff. I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there any projects or offerings that you would like to share with people right now?
Yeah, I offer integration talks. So yeah, if you're in Australia, I also am running a range of workshops. So go on my website, www.nicksun.org, I think, or you can email me at reconnectionworkshops@gmail.com. And I'm in the process of publishing my book, my first book at the moment, which is just a sort of Gen X's humorous take on awakening through the plant medicine path.
I can't wait to read that because I think we need this humor, sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been in so many ceremonies where I was like, man, someone should make a sitcom about this stuff. It's so funny. Shamans are crazy characters, people throwing up everywhere. So I always think it would make an amazing sitcom. But so that's kind of what I've got in the works. So yeah, if you're interested, for sure, drop me a line. And yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to share all your information where people can find you and connect with you in the description of the video. And thank you all for listening. Please leave your comments. Let us know how you like this episode. If you have any questions, connect with us. And also you can find us on Clubhouse. So if you have Clubhouse app, or you can download it, and there is pretty cool psychedelic community there. And we have free Ayahuasca integration room there that I run and moderate every 2 weeks. But there's also a lot of other stuff going on in the psychedelic space. Yeah. So please join us with that and subscribe to the channel and share this video if you liked it, because we are relying on you. We don't have any marketing team to do that. So if you liked it and value the information, share with your friends, and see you next time. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you, Nick, for being here.
No worries, my pleasure, Neil. See ya.